Biggie on sports. He says what they won't say. Tune in, connect, and hear a different perspective.
Once again, welcome to another edition at Biggie on Sport, as we look at a topic that affects athletes within the sporting fraternity. And today we're talking about the mental condition and its impact on sport athletes. Thank you so much for joining us. Sport of any form is seen as an exercise that helps sport personalities to keep fit both physically and mentally. Sports athletes across the globe perform to their best, especially if they are mentally fit and also physically fit without any distraction. But in recent years, we have seen a lot of sporting athletes being affected by depression as well as anxiety in as far as sport is concerned. But to help us unpack all that, we are joined in the studio here by Anton Meerkotter, who is a sporting or mental sport coach. He'll introduce himself and give us a bit of a background as to where it all started. Welcome to Biggie on Sport.
Great, Biggie, man. Thanks for having me here. I'll quickly introduce myself briefly here. So I'm Anton Meerkotter, as you already said. I'm a sports mental coach, and I'm training as Coach Anton. Well, where it all started for me, I think, is my passion for sports started as growing up. We spoke a bit about it earlier as well. But I started by very early days when I was still preschool, when I started doing horse riding. Of course, my mum was a horse riding instructor. Wow. So I got to be exposed to sports from a very, very early age on. Okay. And I went on to eventually at junior level become a national show jumper and equestrian rider in show jumping, equitation and cross country. Mm-hmm. I also, at school, I participated in almost anything that was available at school, having an attitude of, you've got talents, use them or lose them. Mm-hmm. All right. Mm-hmm. So I basically pushed to try and discover any talent I may have, mm-hmm. and tried out any sporting code that was around. Mm-hmm. And obviously in between found the ones I loved more that I would be focusing on. Because it's very important that we actually focus on our sporting codes that we prefer, mm-hmm. because they keep you motivated. Mm-hmm. But my typical day later on at high school as it became, I had many sporting codes. So I'm going to touch base with a few of them. Go ahead. So I would arrive at school, and together with some cultural things it was also done, I played the trumpet at cadet orchestra. I would arrive at like 6 o'clock, starting to train that already, together with the cadet orchestra. And then we basically at 7 o'clock, as everybody else, go back into school activities and things. At break time, you would find me practicing chess. Because I was also the chess captain and a provincial chess player at the school. So you would find me practicing my chess during break time, because I didn't have time for it later to practice it. And you'll find out soon why. Because after school, as school would come out, I would be attending to whatever sporting code at that stage would be the in-sport for the season at the school. And when that finished, I would be collected, I'd go home, and I get a bit busy with my focused and all permanent sports, which would then be my horse riding, which I would at that stage practice 2 horses. So I literally would go and I get one ready and I get on a horse and I do my training, go back, change the saddle and stuff, get the other horse. And when I'm done with all of the training with the horses, I take them back, get to the house, change, jump on a bicycle and cycle to the soccer field. Wow. Okay. So, and that would be my last sport activity for the day.
Busy man. Busy man.
Very busy.
And what inspired Anton to venture into what you're doing currently, becoming sports mental coach?
Well, that started way back in matric when I looked at what to study in sports directions, and I applied for sporting qualifications. I was caught in between. I didn't know what to do. Do I go for sports psychology? Do I go more sports admin? Do I go sports management? But I knew I wanted to work in a sporting environment when my playing days are over. At that stage, I was still focused at trying to become a professional player. But I knew that I didn't want it to stop there. I wanted it to go beyond that, because ultimately we need to focus on way beyond just what could be short term. And unfortunately, it became very short term for me, which was my playing career. But I basically ended up at Royal University because of Kaizer Chiefs. They had an academy there. Right, so it was a Royal Kaizer Chiefs Youth Academy. Of course, we know later they changed the name to UJ, and I was there during the name change.
Okay.
But that was back in '99 when I applied to them, because they showed interest in me, in my playing as well in soccer, and I got a soccer bursary at Royal University. But then I had to choose which sports degree. All right, so I ended up with sports psychology. Initially, I applied for sports management. I got approved. I got in. But unfortunately, some of my results in my final exam, specifically in maths, set me back. It was a bit of I think it was a bit of a disappointment to me, because I was always excelling in maths throughout my schooling years, except for that one exam, which was my final exam in matric. And that exam, unfortunately, set me back to where I could not qualify for BCom sports management. I was half a point short. They then said, it's fine, you're close. If you come and study sports psychology, we could end up halfway through the year changing you back to sports management, because 80% of the subjects are the same, since both has sports science and everything in it. So I was like, oh, no, that sounds good. Let me do that. So I went into sports psychology. Well, halfway through the year, I decided that this is where I want to be. I don't want to change. I fell in love with sports psychology. I really got to feel a desire of using it in sports coaching. See, many times the sports psychologists, in my view, put themselves too much separate from focusing on it as a separate entity. And people almost see it as a separate entity. Like if you're seeing a sports psychologist or a sports mental coach, it's because there's something wrong, okay? It's because you got anxiety or stuff, okay? You mentioned some of those illnesses earlier. So obviously, no, you need mental conditioning in order to perform at your peak. So in order to get to mental conditioning, you obviously need to learn how to implement those skills. So mental conditioning is such a vital part that we often miss as a key part. Just as we take physical conditioning, we need mental conditioning, and I'm in love with that. I'm in love with the implementation of sports mental coaching in sports, and that's what I love. That's what I love teaching and working on.
We will get to the nitty-gritties of your services and what you do.
Yeah.
But this is a career which is not actually well known out there. Not so many people know about this.
Yes.
I'm talking from the perspective of Black community, so to speak, obviously. And for one to venture into that, what does it take, very briefly? Just in layman's term, what can we say to someone?
So technically speaking, you can't currently be a sports psychologist in South Africa. If you want to be a sports psychologist, you need to become you need to specialize in sports psychology, but be a actual psychologist in another field. All right? Because it's not recognized.
Why is that?
It's not recognized as a psychological field on its own.
Really?
By our psychological board. So that being the case back around when I studied, I was hoping that maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the line that would change. But when it were not changing, I then looked further and beyond. And then there is sports mental coaching. Now, sports mental coaching is actually an American term. It goes beyond sports psychology. So it goes even into the tactical part of the game, any part of learning phases and how that links with your actual conditioning on the other side as well. So it goes beyond that, it goes deeper. And that you can actually study. There's a couple of courses available online from people overseas in the US that offers those. When I looked at them, I realized that I'm already doing what they are teaching. Okay, because at that stage I was implementing what I've learned in sports as a coach as well. since I'm also a soccer coach over and beyond sports mental coaching.
So, Anton, are you saying that big football bodies, as well as rugby bodies, such as your rugby union and that is your likes of the PSL, SAFA, where there's Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates, those teams, your rugby sevens, they don't have such services?
So, you track back. They didn't until a few years back. In the last 2 decades, they started getting these services, but they mostly use them to provide this service only towards a big event. Mm-hmm. So they use it as preparation towards a big event, just to do conditioning right at the end. Unfortunately, missing out an opportunity on day-to-day conditioning. I understand that it's easy to see the need of, I need a physical conditioning coach, because you're going to physically participate. Everyone knows that. All right. Your energy levels are not going to be where they need to be, and so forth. But we don't always see the need for having mental conditioning equal to that, side by side in the technical team. And that's actually essential, because ultimately you're facing so many things out there that triggers you. It triggers your personality, that can distract you, that can decrease your form. Things that can frustrate you, things in life that impact you on the field. I mean, things in life can be really impacting on the field itself. And that's what we really want to understand. Coaches in a sports mental coaching side needs to be used more. It is sad not seeing that used in enough of our teams, yeah. But there is teams who are using that. I mean,
for me, it's a recipe for disaster for teams to continue playing without such services. My question is prompted by one incident, which it's a very depressing one. Orlando Pirates goalkeeper, as they were playing against Kaizer Chiefs in a derby a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Prior to the match, he learned about the passing on of his mother prior to that particular encounter. And then another player of Orlando Pirates, he fell onto the ground. Sometimes last week, as they were playing in the Nedbank Cup. And paramedics tried to resuscitate him and stuff like that by applying CPR until he was sent to the hospital. That on its own, that incident, especially the one of the guy who fell onto the ground, affected, obviously, the players psychologically going forward. Obviously, they cannot perform to their level best, considering that one of their colleagues has encountered that particular incident. Yeah. And also the goalkeeper that I'm talking about, we can actually make so many classic examples here. So where do you start? Where do you start grouping together your players and encourage them if such teams don't have such services, such as the one that you offer?
Yeah. So a situation like that is both of those cases can be quite traumatizing, and it takes you to really have extreme focus, but you could use some of that to drive you and convert it into positive energy. For example, the passing of the mother. If the mother was someone who's always supported him in order to be able to do well, as much as it can be shock, especially if it was, I don't know the situation, but I mean, if she was ill before that, and it was kind of, you're hoping it doesn't go there, but you know it could happen. In a situation like that, you could really use it to drive you to push ahead and dedicate a game to her. That could actually push your performance. The flip side is, if you totally didn't expect it, especially then, that can really come as a shock to you, which then totally distract you and take your focus away. Exactly. And there's no way you focus on the game in that moment. Most of the cases where that have happened, players would not be able to continue that game. But I don't know maybe you know the detail there, but I don't know the detail as to what she passed on off, or whether it was totally unexpected, or maybe there was a possibility of that in the back of their mind.
I'm going to make a reference here to a 32-year-old playing rugby, known as Captain Owen Farrell, who recently announced stepping aside from international rugby duties because of he made a decision not also to participate in the 2024 that is Six Nations tournament, as he has suffered depression and anxiety. In that instance, what intervention can you make in as far as your services are concerned?
So Well, when it comes to that first, I mean, I'm focusing on conditioning aspects in increasing your performance itself on the field. That day needs a therapist of a different level. There I would have to refer the person to actual psychologist. As much as I know what to do, it's not my position to work with that person. Okay. So there I would refer the person to an actual psychologist because it goes beyond sports psychology, it goes beyond sports mental coaching. But of course, I would be able to assist in the process with managing that in the team. But he needs to go for that consultations with actual psychologist in that situation. That is beyond just sports mental coaching and sports psychology. But it's not uncommon, totally not uncommon.
Okay.
I think anxiety and so on is really in depression and those type of things is very common in the sports. So if we look at depression, that is often triggered by things from around us, traumatic experiences we've gone through. And sometimes it's even triggered by the extreme push of just winning. That can actually lead you to that point as well. So there's a risk.
Talking about that, the last point. Another example is of a 23-year-old who was playing for Ospreys Rugby Club.
Okay.
Henry Bogan, he was 23. He started playing because he was raised within a rugby family. He started playing at the age of 18. At the age of 23, he was plagued by injuries, an assortment of injuries. And that throwed him out from the game itself. He became suicidal as well.
My goodness. Look, injuries can lead players to a lot of depression. I mean, you can imagine if he became a hit around 18 and at 23 years, only 5 years down the line. I mean, when you become a hit at 18, you're thinking, I've got a chance of having a career for about 15 years. Until about at least 33, 35. And at that stage, you're really thinking, this is where I'm going. That's where I'm heading. The problem is when you get that setback, I mean, where you suddenly get injuries and you get plagued by injuries, and it's like your world is collapsing. The world that you imagined, the path you imagined for yourself has just collapsed. It's gone. You don't see purpose. You don't see where you are going. You don't see why you should try anything else. You didn't want all these other things. And perhaps you didn't take steps to fall back onto something if something like this had to happen. Because unfortunately, the reality is injuries and actual illness and those things can stop you totally from performing as a sports athlete. But it cannot stop you from working in the sports industry. So if you envision that up front, there is something to fall back onto. But if you didn't, you really have nothing to fall back onto in your mind at that point of time because it wasn't part of what you envisioned for life.
Anton, let's go back to your services that you offer throughout the country.
Yeah.
You are actually embarking on a nationwide tours, conducting workshops and seminars and so forth. And right now, we've been talking about sport, but obviously limited to football, rugby, etc. Your services, I guess, they go beyond sport itself, actual or different sporting codes. Let's talk about different sporting codes here that you offer your services. Tell the listeners or the audience what is on offer from Anton, what is it that you do, and so forth. And also, tell us about the highlights since you have started this particular project. What has been the highlights since you started?
Okay, lovely. I'll go back a bit more of the information as to why do I have them. You spoke of the workshops that I'm running at the moment and so on as well. Now, I basically, during COVID, had to sit back and say, okay, now, because I was forced to sit back, I couldn't be on the field coaching, I couldn't be out there using and doing what I love and working with development. And yeah, I was stuck at home. So, and I'm someone who don't like sitting down only. All right. So I want to be busy with something. It's fine if I sit down to zoom out, but I can't zoom out all day. So I got into a point where I looked at everything that I've got on the table that I'm offering. And one of those, of course, being sport mental coaching. Before that, it was more in the form of consultations, guiding a player, doing physical assessments, going onto the sports field, seeing them play or participate.
Wow.
If it's a golf player, for example, going around the golf course with him as he's playing, assessing and analyzing his swing and everything he's doing, his behavior in between, So I could guide him better on his concentration, which techniques and which skill sets to use that can improve his game. But at that point, I sat back and I was like, but what is really missing? What's missing here is too many guys who are coaching see that there's a need for sports mental coaching. They realize they don't have knowledge about it, but they don't want to become a sports mental coach or sports psychologist.
I see.
So the only thing available for them is going to do a diploma or a degree in sports psychology.
Okay.
So there's no other way that they could just know what it is that can be done and or how to actually benefit the teammates or the team itself that they are part of and the technical team. So it goes beyond. So what I saw was a gap, and that gap needs somebody who can show them how to use, not why, but how to use sports mental coaching.
I see.
Because they don't always need to know the why. See, if you're a sports psychologist, you need to know why, because when things change, you need to be able to adapt. But when you're a coach, you could be guided and mentored by somebody who knows why. And you could be implementing it in your sessions from a day-to-day basis. You could have your players understanding the other side and implementing it. Let me give you a physical example. A player who knows how to dribble. The coach don't need to know how to dribble, because he's not going to need to dribble.
Okay.
The coach needs to know when he needs to use that skill set.
Exactly.
And when he should not use it. All right? Same with mental coaching.
And also what the skill set will benefit
Exactly.
the team at that moment.
It doesn't help me as a coach to know exactly how to do visualization if you don't know it as a player. I need the player to know how to implement visualization, and then I need to guide him as to when I want him to use it. So there's different form of visualization, of course. There is group visualization settings, there's pre-match, there's post-match, there's during the game. There's different situations, but I just use this as an example. So understanding each of those, they are implemented differently, but they come down to the same point, is you including the mind and the body physically linked to get peak performance. And that takes you to another level. It takes you to a level where you could have about 50% and sometimes even more in actual performance increase. So what do I offer? I offer sports mental coaching workshops. And I basically show in there to players, coaches, rest of technical team, anybody in sports, or even those in working environments who want to be involved, how to use these skill sets to increase performance. So I can even pitch this to a company. Obviously, I will tweak the examples I use, right?
Okay.
But the skill sets can be used in life. They can be used to anybody and by anybody. I mean, if I'm going to have, say, for example, this interview with you today, I could be visualizing this up front and come here and be prepared.
Wow.
You know, so when I come sit here, I'm not distracted by too many other things. I could feel it itch on my head, and instead of scratching, I could be focused on what we're doing, because I don't need to be distracted. I'm in control of my body. I'm in control of my actions. I'm in control of what I'm doing next. In the same in work, you could be having a client you're going to pitch a sale to, and how you behave in that moment. We know body language speaks more than actual language. So preparation is crucial, and how you prepare yourself, even mentally, can land or not land you a customer.
How are your services being received out there? I know you had one workshop sometimes last week.
That's correct.
If I'm not mistaken, you had one workshop. How are your services being received?
So the response is different. A lot of people show interest. A few people commit. And at this stage, I'm not even charging a lot for my workshops, because I'm trying to get the message out there. But the nice thing is, in the last 2 workshops, I've been able to spread it across a couple of different sporting codes. I've had people from table tennis and from netball and from soccer and some from different sporting codes coming out to these workshops. I've had players, I've had coaches. So there is a response. I had a lot of them who said, I want to be there, but I can't be there. I've already got this commitment on that time. So there is beyond the actual workshops that I do in group settings. I could also be called in by club to run a workshop with the club, with the players, with the technical team. And services I offer beyond that is then the consultations to the team, consultation to the technical team, because it's different, all right? The technical team needs to understand how to guide the team to implement it. The technical team needs to understand when to implement it, as I just explained earlier. So they need to know how to implement it. They just need to know when, they need to know how. Ultimately, they both need to understand how to benefit from it so that they are on the same page with each other. But I think having that type of guidance, having actual consultations and or online coaching with the team or directly face-to-face, it all differs. It differs the situation. We've got a team from Cape Town that's maybe perhaps not in the PSL. They're not going to fly me in and out. They can't afford it.
Precisely.
If they're in a PSL, it's a different story, all right? Because then they've got the money most of the time, or at least we assume they do. But even then, online meetings from time to time may be good enough, especially if they're having a video session at that same time. Having, in a similar way, an online session is very possible.
You're speaking of the PSL, and you spoke earlier on about Kaizer Chiefs being attached to Kaizer Chiefs. They're going through a slump, especially for a team of Chiefs' stature as well as standings within football fraternity.
Yeah.
And they've received a lot of backlash from their supporters. Players are not performing well, being criticized that there's a 9-year dry season in as far as championship trophies are concerned. Do you think perhaps there is a mental issue, mental challenge within Chiefs as a structure, from coaching maybe to the players, considering the factors I've mentioned, being criticized, being disowned by the fans and so forth?
I think there's a very deep factor. There's so many challenges. I mean, if you look at what they're going through right now, you look at Kaizer Chiefs and what they used to be.
Exactly.
Or you look at them right now and say, but were they that much different from what they are today, or did other clubs catch up? I think you've got to look at both aspects, all right? But as a fan, you don't want to hear that. Or as a supporter, you don't want to hear that. So I obviously have been on both sides. I grew up as a Kaizer Chiefs supporter.
Okay.
Okay. So and at one stage I played for the Chiefs Academy. So obviously I've got a very close leaning towards them, and a passion for the club in general. But it's sad to see what they're going through. But I know I could help them if I had the opportunity to work with them. That's
the opportunity,
and they sit in a situation where
to sell yourself. This is an opportunity.
So absolutely. So I think, as it is, there's two different aspects here. Firstly, for the supporters, they also need help and guidance. They're supporters clubs. You can have meetings with them. They need to be guided. At this stage, the club don't need fans. They need supporters. So what's the difference? A fan blows when it's hot.
Exactly.
A fan makes noise when it's hot.
Yeah.
A supporter,
always there.
A supporter is there, especially when tough times comes. Yes, exactly. And that is what a supporters club is about. It's not called a fan club on purpose, because it's not a fan club, it's a supporters club. It's easy to be a fan. It's not easy to be a supporter. A club financially benefits from fans, but in terms of emotional side, they don't benefit from a fan, they benefit from a supporter. So we need to understand that that's a role fans need to play. But the club can play that role in helping fans to do that, helping fans to understand that, by sending someone like myself, even at that level. With the team itself, the players is in a position where they go from day to day. I don't believe they go to training and don't give their best. I mean, I looked at Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs game. Some people were like, yo, Pirates did it again, Chiefs collapsed. But they forget that before the last two league games, Chiefs were on a run, winning derbies and dominating the derbies. And not so long before that, Pirates were dominating that. So and then of course, there's all Baxter around, Chiefs again dominated around that time. So we've got to go, it's ups and downs, it's form, it's how it goes. But as it is right now, when a player walks onto that field and he does not feel supported, he feels extra pressure automatically. He knows he's got to perform. That's what a supporter wants. But at the same time, he's under pressure because he knows he did not perform up to expectations of the supporters before it. He also knows that a club he plays for would not exist at the level it's existing at if it wasn't for the supporters, if it wasn't for those following the club. Why? Because, as we know in professional sport, the money, the salary, the sponsors, everything is dependent on how many supporters you've got. All right? Everything is linked to that. And as a player, that means your salary is linked to that. The type of pressure goes through a player at that point of time, knowing that the supporters are calling for my head. They're calling for me to leave. They're calling for me to not be on the ground right now. Or I could be interchanged. All right. That's a lot of pressure. And considering that a lot of Kaizer Chiefs players right now are finally what supporters have been calling for over so many years. They are young players. They're young, talented players with a lot of great talent. But here's the one concern. How much are we helping them to reach their peak as a support base? And at the same time, we know media sells on negative media. Are we buying into what media is saying? Are we guiding what we want from the team? So it's so easy. Media is going to sell negatively because that's what makes a newspaper sell.
Exactly.
All right. If I say
media can make you and can break you.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, when I say that, say for example, I go and say, Kune had the best behavior at this party. That newspaper is not selling. But if I say, Kune misbehaved, the sales are gone. Yeah. It's going through the roof. It's going through the ceiling. I will know that. As a supporter, I need to know that too. So I need to be searching for good news because I really want to support the player. How do I support him if I only know the bad things?
Anton,
and before we go there, so from a club perspective, the club needs someone to guide these players, to give them mental skills that they can use. If they can get into the zone on the field and they can be focused. But a coach also needs to understand because there's pros and cons of being in the zone. He's often sold only with the pros, right? Only positives being sold. But let me give you an example. If whatever is not included in that zone at the moment, the player is going to be switched off from. Okay? Yeah. If that zone does not include what's off the pitch, the coach's instructions may not be heard by the player. And that could be a con. Right, so that could be a negative aspect. So we need to understand the pros and the cons in the situation. That's part of the negative aspects in the, and we need to be prepared for that. So there need to be plans up front. How did the coach deal with that? Is he ready for that? Of course, that's what I cover that in my workshops as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
As you conduct your workshops throughout the country, what is it that your delegates, if not audience, takes away from the workshop themselves?
Yeah, I've had a lot of remarks.
In which area do you capacitate and empower those in attendance?
I think what a lot of them have taken away is they said there's so much they've learned that they never thought about. Because I touch onto your communications impact. I touch onto your like how you talk to people, what you consider, what you don't, how you feel emotionally, and or your opinions and in your mindset and all of that impacts your frustration levels and so on as well. And because we're so diverse in South Africa, I mean, we're extremely diverse. I mean, we've got people from our very native black cultures. We've got your white cultures. We've got mixes between that. We've got your Asian cultures. We're probably one of the most diverse countries in the world. I mean, this is an extremely diverse countries, and families were very diverse. I mean, I'm happening to be, I would say, privileged to be in that position where I can easily navigate it even from my personal experiences, because I mean, I'm in a very multicultural family. So that's another thing as well. So I mean, you're looking at that and you're like, what is the different cultural impacts? If I don't understand cultural differences, if I don't try to learn cultural differences, how am I going to make sure the person I speak to get the message I want to give to him? Because I may speak to him from my cultural background, and he may listen to me from his cultural background, meaning we may miss each other in the process, right? And now, people walking away from my workshops learn to respect those things. They learn to want to know more. They learn to want to be a better leader, a better mentor as a coach. And what I find for the players, they walk away from it and feel, wow, okay, I can be a leader on a pitch without being a captain. Captain is not all about being the communication between the technical team and the players. but it's also about being the gel in a team. All right, that which glue in a team, keeping the team together, keeping the team to perform as a unit. So ultimately, you walk away from the workshop having learned skill sets and the importance of skill sets that you never knew before, or that you didn't think of before, but you actually knew. And you may realize and be directed that, oh, there's things I did, because a lot of these are natural things that we actually are born to be able to use. These are skill sets. It's not something that's unnatural. These are skill sets that's very natural that we're actually supposed to be able to do. A child is imagining a little friend outside when he's a little child. As a parent, we say, oh, he's crazy, this one, he needs help. All right? Oh, don't worry about him, he's crazy. Not realizing that's a skill set. And because we discourage it, when he grows older, he doesn't use it. Now what was it? It was visualization. So now we want him to use visualization in sports, but we discourage that skill set at a young age. So the moment we learn that these things are linked, I mean, they're not new, we just need to know how to use them and when to use them. All right? They're linked. And maybe we need to just grow those skill sets and develop them further. And that's ultimately, that's what basically...
They say, or research says on average, athletes, when I say athletes, I mean sportmen and women between the ages of 23 and 35 are affected by depression and anxiety. What effect has that?
Okay, we've touched base already on a few of them with your earlier part, but I think when it comes to your anxiety and depression, it is often driven by the extreme push to win instead of forgetting I'm in entertainment, all right? And entertainment is supposed to be enjoyed. So if you as a player are not enjoying it, your audience may not enjoy it. We have all watched those games where it gets ugly and it gets nasty because it's all focused on winning and at the expense of rather than at the performance by, right? So we don't do it at the expense of the opponent, but at the performance by the athletes. That is what we want. But sometimes we are pushed so much to win that it goes beyond that. And there is really, most people will not find joy in actually hurting someone else, negatively impacting someone else. And unfortunately, the game gets nasty at that level where everything is just about winning. Because you end up trying to, and sometimes even being instructed to take someone off the field with an injury on purpose. And because you don't see how else to beat them. Whereas you should really be finding out how do we as a team beat this player with our skill sets. Because ultimately, your sport is professional because it's entertainment. So we forget that. And that leads us to the point where we then get depressed because we get caught in between, I joined this, I started becoming a professional athlete, not for the money, for passion of the game. When I went to the sports field the first time, I didn't do it to go and pick up money on the field. I did it because I want to play with my buddies. I want to play with my friends. I want to play against other kids. I want to play against other friends. I want to have fun using skills. Now when they get a professional level, and everything becomes about winning. And a sponsor threatens, if you don't win, we may pull out. And those type of things become part of it because there's endorsements and stuff involved. And that leads to a lot of this pressure. Or if you win this, you may get this endorsement. And your agent is saying, we need that endorsement. The drive is no longer about joy here, about what you enjoyed in the first place, about what made you passionate about the sport. It is now all pushed around money and winning and just, it's on another level. And then there is the off-the-field aspect. Often, coaches are also guilty of this often, where they treat a player not as a person, but as an object. So we are often used as an object on the field of play as a sporting athlete.
Yes.
And that leads to a point where you feel like, but what's going on here? I'm a person after all, just like you, I've got emotions. And off the field, you're going through something you explained earlier about, for example, player's mum who passed away just before the field.
Yes.
Imagine a coach with no compassion. Imagine the coach showed zero compassion in that situation. There was no ways that player would perform in that match. No ways. But if the coach shows support, shows compassion, and even willingness to say, are you up to the task? Are you going to be fine? Do you want me to rest you? If that is shown, that player can be pulled in. Whereas often we are just pushed to win. We're like, I don't care what happened. You've got to come play. We need you need to perform. Now that would totally put the player off, and that will unfortunately kill the passion of the player going forward. He may even quit the sport at a young age because he's like, I'm an object here. You know?
We've been talking about contact sport, your rugby, your football, boxing, and so forth. And another sport that comes into mind, it's a sport of chess, or as well as pool. I don't know, do we classify them under sport? And how do you go about in psyching up those who are participating in chess as well as pool?
So that's obviously, as I said earlier, as I explained, I mean, I play chess as well. So for me, that's a touchy point. I love that.
Okay.
So chess, definitely, I will be standing with it saying that is a sport. But anything of those can be sports. I mean, guys, like board games can become sports if it becomes about competing against a competitor with the purpose of one of us got to win.
Okay.
And that becomes very different instead of just have it being leisure. So any form of game can actually become sport. That's why you've got poker and you've got those things being a sport as well. You've got even e-games, this is your online games. It becomes actual sports these days where people do it professionally as well. So definitely when it comes to chess, when it comes to pool, when it comes to poker, any of those, we really got to be extremely focused, but very tactical. And where body language gives a lot away. You really need to be in the game. You need to be focused on the game, but you need to be very aware of your body language because your body language can sell you. Let's give an example in chess. If I make a mistake, now, I don't know if you noticed, but in chess competitions, the moment you touch a piece, you have to move it. It's called touch move.
Touch is a move.
So I'm going and I'm touching this piece to move it, and I make a mistake. But I realize that move has consequences that I didn't see as I touch it. But it's too late. What do I do? All right. So at that point in time, if you stay calm and you don't show it in your body language, the opponent are likely to miss it. But if you at that stage panic or show your disappointment in the mistake you just made or your awareness even of a mistake, chance is the opponent now are going to look extra hard to try and find what about that situation you stressed about. Because we look for that as chess players. And the same in many of your other similar games will get it very mental and get to a point where concentration plays a big role as well. So yeah, they're going to concentrate and focus extra on trying to find how to punish you now because they can see in your body language that you feel you just did something wrong. Now, you asked about this being psyched up. Those ones, you actually need to calm down.
Oh, sweet.
So many of these sporting goals, you need to be very calm, but it's not about being just calm. It's about being calm and focused. So you want to get yourself into the zone where you're focused on this. I mean, if somebody next to you are playing another game there, you can't suddenly be responding to that and be distracted by that. Because it happens that someone will take a piece and put it like that on the board. And then you're distracted. You're totally... Exactly. You're totally distracted by that. So you could be looking at if you're not focused on your game. And that moment can take you off your game and even out of your plan because perhaps you're busy calculating a 20-move long plan, which is quite long in chess. Right? I mean, that is almost master level difference. They do it all the time. Some of the others reach that occasionally where they may have had that plan in mind. So these plans happen. These plans definitely happen. And I remember outcoming games that I visualized about 15 moves prior to that. And I saw the possibility of it finishing in that position. And it finished there. But have I not visualized it? Have I not known that I'm guiding him towards a position where he think something is a better move for him, but instead it gives me a chance? And I guided the game towards that. And he took the bait. And the moment he did it, I knew that the game will become a draw, and I was in a total loss in that situation. All right.
Young kids
Yeah.
who are at junior level,
Yes.
do you also offer your services to them who are
Yes.
trying their luck in cricket, who are trying their luck in softball or basketball, etc., etc.? Do you offer services to them, and in what area of their well-being do you assist them?
Okay. So I'm going to go into it because I've got a passion for development. Firstly, when it comes to soccer coaching, I've got a program that runs from the age of 2 to 19.
Okay.
But I don't implement sports mental coaching as in consulting and teaching them, guiding them like in a consultation.
Okay.
Because the child will be bored to death. Okay.
They get bored quite
I
easily.
implement sports mental coaching skills through coaching. In other words, what I guide him to do and not to do, and how to think, and those type of things. Yes, that's where I implement it. So the best way to get it through to a very young child, age of maybe say 6, 7, 8, the best way there is through the coach and or through the parent. Those are the ones that's got a bigger impact. I cannot walk in and just do a sit-down consultation with that child. I'll be boring him. He's not going to want to keep coming back. All right, unless because I know how to talk to him and maybe refer to things, I'll be using a lot of examples. So if I had to have that meeting, I'll be using a lot of examples similar to him that could be funny, that could be implementing, that could be positive, that can guide him. But anything beyond that, from about 9 onwards, you can really start working on the main leadership skills where you can actually teach him. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing that. Because now they're starting to think more the why. Not just, I'm doing this, all right?
And also maybe the benefits as well.
Correct. And they also start to become more competitive around that time. So that's why you'll see before that many parts of the world, they actually don't even have an outcome of somebody who's winning and someone who's losing anymore in matches. It's all about you coming to play, you give your best, you leave. There's no winner of the tournament. Okay? South Africa, we're not doing that. We should do that. It will really benefit because it helps. It helps the kids to give their best and not to be stressed and don't become nasty to each other and they become focused. But now, from the age of 9 onwards to about 13, they start being balanced between the physical development and obviously their character development becomes so important. Not just knowing how to lead by example, that's the easy part, but understanding how to guide someone to get the best out of that player. How to play different to help your teammate perform. To pick up when your teammate is physically off form that day and what he's struggling with and realizing how you can change the way you play to make it easy for him. For example, if he's struggling with his mid to long passes on the day, give him a lot of short pass options.
Okay.
Right? So I pass to him and move into a short pass area because that's not where he's struggling on the day. All right. So if I picked it up, he cannot even be exposed. He will even look good in the game. But instead, I'm working harder because now I've got to make a lot of short runs. I can't just run to where I want to be eventually.
Exactly.
There's a lot more play before that needs to happen. So I can't just give him a ball and move into a nice open space and expect him to make the squeeze pass through the gap and I get the ball, for example, in soccer. So I've got to think about it and I've got to plan for it. But this child can start learning that. To pick up, my friend is struggling with this. Or his skill sets are not where I needed to be for him to make that pass. So why am I running there? A classical example. Give a ball for a throw in to a group of under 9 kids.
Yeah, they all run towards.
No, actually, the opposite happened. They run to the box. They want the ball in the box. They want to go score because they see it on TV.
Okay.
But the poor kid who is doing the throw-in.
But who's going to receive the ball from the throw-in?
That's the thing. The poor child who's doing the throw-in, they're calling for it. They want him to throw it into the box. It's what they see people doing on TV.
Okay.
But the child can't do that. He cannot reach even more than 10 meters in his throw.
Exactly.
So they all run there, and it's funny. But if you don't pick up at that point that you need to guide these kids, that is part of mental coaching. They need to understand how to think to get the best out of my teammate positionally, tactically, and at the same time emotionally. So those are all part of these things. It's not just about visualization and how not to be frustrated, how to stay calm with my teammate. But it's also about understanding my teammate is off. I need to get him back.
As Anton, are you able to tell or detect from a distance watching TV that this player is preoccupied?
Yes.
Hence, he's not performing at his best.
I can definitely spot
What are the signs does, for instance, myself, Chris, or myself, Biggie, what should I look out for? Here's a player on TV, and this player, he's not into the game.
Okay, so
This player is distracted.
I'll use typical examples. Perhaps I shouldn't throw names on it, but there's some famous players
Okay.
who, they're known for that when they get irritated, when they get frustrated with, for example, a referee's decision,
Okay.
they really get out of the game. But we know that physically, this guy is one of the best players out there. Even if he can be focused on the game, he can be one of the best players in everything. Maybe a set piece specialist, running into good spaces, being quite quick. Now, if I can focus on the mistakes of the ref, he starts being concerned by everything and almost take on a victim mentality where now everything the ref does, that 50-50 calls could have gone either way. If it didn't go our way, the ref is against us. So the player will get to that point if he, in the first place, got irritated by something of the ref. Now, as a player, you could trigger it. I mentioned that, as we spoke before, that some people would do things on purpose. That's part of the nasty side of sport. To try and trigger your frustration or irritation, knowing that will decrease your concentration, which will decrease your performance. So you can see the player who is now focused on external things that's not the game itself. Focusing more on the ref, opposition, talking to them, commenting to them, shouting things to each other, wanting to really get aggressive on the pitch and not being focused on the game and playing and where's my teammates and where can I expose them in terms of making a pass. Yet the very same player, if he was focused, would have done those other things. So yes, you can pick it up. You can definitely pick it up.
Anton, I wish we could stretch this conversation quite longer, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to tell the audience where they can find you if they need your offices, if they need your services. I beg yours.
That's perfect. So if you need to get hold of me, I'm available. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Both of those, I'm trading as Coach Anton. And I'm also on YouTube, but those are more information, so they're not there on a week-to-week basis. But definitely on the other two I mentioned, I'm there quite frequent. I'm also in LinkedIn for those on professional level want to get hold of me. And of course, there's the basic traditional ways. Yeah? Get hold of me on WhatsApp, get hold of me on directly calling me. My number for that, if you want me to give or you want to display it afterwards, is 074-194-8212. If you're outside our borders, it's +27 74 194 8212. And of course, Coach Anton, keeping your mind in the game.
Okay, there you have it. That's how we come to the end of it for this edition of Biggie on Sport. We say what they won't say. And once again, thank you for watching. And please do share and like our socials as reflected on our screens. Until then, sharp, sharp.
Biggie on Sports. He says what they won't say.
Number 6, save.
Tune in, connect, and hear a different perspective.